NASCAR has successfully dragged the other race teams into their legal battle against 2311 and Front Row, and Fox upgrades their Truck Series broadcast in a big way. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. Atlanta Motor Speedway this Saturday night on TNT, the start of the in-season challenge. But looking ahead to Chicago, some fresh paint is set to hit the streets of the Windy City, beginning with, whoa, Kyle Busch, Slurpee on the side. 7-Eleven, I think they're based in Chicago, right? Oh, no, they're actually based just down the road from me in Irving, Texas. I should have known that. Actually, now it makes sense why Kyle Busch debuted the 7-Eleven scheme at Texas Motor Speedway. Still, the Slurpee colors at Chicago look great. Love to see that. The Xfinity Series race just got a bit more competitive. Junior Motorsports just announced that Shane Van Gisbergen will look to defend his Saturday Chicago crown in the number 9 WeatherTech Chevrolet. Look at this. They're going to have dueling paint schemes. WeatherTech and Red Bull alternates on both SVG's number 9 and Connor Zilich's usual number 88. A friendly competition, as they put it. Although I kind of like this comment, winner gets a cup ride next year. That might be facts. No, I'm just kidding. But those are two great looking rival paint schemes. Remember last year's Saturday Chicago Xfinity Series race was SVG versus Larson, and that was awesome. I can only imagine the veteran Shane Van Gisbergen going up against the 18-year-old phenom Connor Zilich. Ooh, that's going to be must-see television. Looking ahead to Chicago, what could be the final Chicago street race weekend. But before we get to Chicago, this weekend, of course, the Cup and Xfinity Series racing at Atlanta Motor Speedway, Echo Park Speedway. The Truck Series is up in Connecticut at Lime Rock Park. Mike Joy just announced that he will be calling the Truck Series broadcast on Fox. Big Fox, Saturday afternoon, the Craftsman Truck Series at Lime Rock. Is this a home race for Mike Joy? I know he got like one of his early starts calling races up at Stafford Motor Speedway in Connecticut. Oh shoot, he won a historic Trans Am race at Lime Rock Park in 2013. I forgot that even in more recent years, Mike Joy has driven race cars, historic race cars. He's raced with his son, I believe, some really cool stuff. So yeah, all right, Mike Joy, very closely connected to Lime Rock Park. Really cool that he will anchor the Big Fox Truck Series broadcast this weekend. Although as I reread this, he doesn't explicitly say what his role is going to be. Imagine they put Mike Joy on pit road and leave Jamie Little in the play-by-play booth. Let's hope this means Mike Joy will be leading the Fox Truck Series broadcast. That should be pretty cool. I'm sure it will be a special moment for Mike Joy. But now, NASCAR is back in session. We have some significant NASCAR antitrust lawsuit updates. I am going to break it all down. Quick disclaimer, I am not a legal expert, though I do follow NASCAR very closely, and I have covered this case since the very beginning. With that being said, here's the background info you need to know. The NASCAR versus 2311 Front Row antitrust lawsuit is currently in the discovery phase. NASCAR asked the 12 other Cup Series organizations that are not currently suing them to turn over their financial records as part of this discovery process. According to multiple reporters who attended a hearing earlier this week, NASCAR was asking those teams to submit the last 11 years worth of records and communications. Those 12 teams who are not a part of this antitrust lawsuit have fought back against those requests. The team's attorney, Adam Ross, said this week in that hearing, quote, "It would be absolutely devastating to these race teams if their competitors were able to find out sponsorships on the cars, driver salaries, and all revenue streams. It cannot make its way into the public realm. NASCAR has gone a step too far." Whew. To put it simply, NASCAR wants the financial records from these other teams so that they can fully understand how much money the teams make under the charter agreement. 2311 and Front Row are currently fighting to upheave the entire business model, so NASCAR may be looking for evidence that shows the current model actually works. NASCAR is also countersuing 2311 and Front Row, alleging that 2311's Curtis Polk led an illegal campaign to unify unify the race teams against NASCAR during their negotiations. NASCAR has used words like threatened or extortion, so I'm sure NASCAR would like to parse all the teams' communication to find evidence related to that. But the teams, the 12 teams that are not part of this lawsuit, don't want to turn over proprietary information because they're afraid of it being made public. Leaks happen. Things get said in court. The teams do not want their competition to see their private business information. Also, the teams are wary of the France family using that information against them, whether that be in future negotiations or even on the track. Remember, under the current charter agreement, the France family is allowed to purchase and own charters. The teams could be showing Jim France, their direct on-track competition, exactly how to run a Cup Series team. That's not fair. So that's the gist of what went down in a hearing earlier this week. Today, in a decision, Judge Kenneth Bell ruled mostly in favor of the 12 race teams. He decided that the teams must provide some of the requested information, but nowhere near as much or as much detailed info as NASCAR initially was asking for. Teams must provide information on total revenue, total costs, net profits and losses, and sponsorship income. There will be an independent accounting firm that looks over all the data and will present the numbers to NASCAR without specific team names attached. So, based on everything I've read, well, Judge Bell is not forcing the teams to turn over all of their information. Those 12 race teams cannot be happy that they're being drug into this lawsuit whatsoever. Remember, NASCAR is not the NFL. I know they have a commissioner now, but the NASCAR commissioner and sanctioning body does not operate like the National Football League. In the NFL, all the teams are connected. The commissioner, Roger Goodell, effectively works for the owners. In NASCAR, all of the race teams are private, independent businesses that compete in a league owned by NASCAR, who is privately owned by the France family. The France family does not share their private business data with the teams, and the teams typically do not share their private business data with the France family. NASCAR was trying to breach that boundary here. These 12 teams, Hendrick, Gibbs, Penske, Trackhouse, RCR, etc., they played ball. They signed the charter agreement last fall, despite less than ideal circumstances. They basically said, hey, we don't love all these terms, but we'll sign the deal so that the sport can move forward. They played ball. And as a reward, NASCAR and the courts are forcing them to turn over private financial information. So yeah, even though Judge Bell mostly sided with the teams, if I'm Hendrick, Gibbs, Penske, etc., I would be pissed off. I get that this is all part of the legal process as far as I can tell. Like, NASCAR has every right to ask for this information, and obviously the judge chose to grant them part of their request. I don't blame them necessarily for doing that, but that hearing yesterday, it just seemed to raise the tension between NASCAR and many of its race teams. These are the teams that signed your deal. They're not suing you. They're more or less on your side, and you're dragging them into this case, forcing them to turn over data. That's the part that's weird about this, is that it doesn't seem to be a two-way street. It's a one-way street with information going from these race teams to NASCAR's attorneys, but NASCAR's attorneys aren't sending any information back. I'm sure 2311 and Front Row's legal representatives will get access to some of NASCAR's data through this discovery process, but Hendrick, Gibbs, Penske, Trackhouse, they're not going to see any of that unless it gets leaked publicly at some point. So it's kind of a one-way street right now. I don't blame NASCAR for asking for the world, but I'm also not surprised that the judge mostly sided with the teams. Judge Kenneth Bell, I think, made a very strong statement in yesterday's hearing. He said, quote, "I am amazed at the effort going into burning this house down over everybody's heads, but I'm the fire marshal and I will be here in December if need be." Ooh, yeah, the trial date between NASCAR, 2311 Front Row, is set for December 1st. Of this year. That's what he's referencing. But yeah, this is yet another judge who is urging NASCAR and 2311 Front Row to mediate, to try to reach some sort of settlement. The discovery process is ongoing. I have no idea how this ends. The team's attorney, Jeffrey Kessler, obviously is well known for his work in essentially establishing the name, image, and likeness, the NIL college sports era. Like, through those lawsuits, through those decisions, now it feels, and I'm a fairly casual college sports fan, but my perception is that the NCAA does not have as much power as they used to. If Kessler and 2311 Front Row are successful in this antitrust case against NASCAR, then NASCAR will have less power, less influence than they do currently. I know that NASCAR and college athletics are very, very different, but my perception of college athletics are that it's kind of a free-for-all. There aren't many guardrails. It feels like, at least on the football side, you have like some big conferences like the SEC and the Big Ten sort of stepping in to try and fill the void that has been left by the NCAA. I don't know what the equivalent would be for NASCAR. It sounds like if the teams are successful, they would want NASCAR to sell off ownership stake of some of the tracks. The teams are still fighting, it sounds like, for permanent charters. Who knows what sort of concessions would be made? Who knows what NASCAR will look like this time next year if the teams are successful? Vice versa, if NASCAR wins this lawsuit, is that the end of 2311 Front Row? What happens going forward? Does that stifle future investment into race teams, into the sport? I'm not sure. It's fascinating to watch this play out, especially when there are notable milestones met, but how this will ultimately end up is still anyone's guess, in my opinion. But let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Your initial read, your initial reaction to the hearing yesterday and Judge Bell's decision today. That's the latest. Wanted to talk it out. I'll leave it there for now. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, folks. I'll talk with you again real soon. Lots of content, some driver interviews coming to the show later this week. I will see you then. Have a great rest of your night, folks.